there, I think would win in Illinois, and I think would win in New York, which is all places that, in theory, that base. We have to go out and earn it. And like in 20.
That's a huge statement. Huge. President Donald Trump, he said, if you had a real election and Jesus came down and God came down and said, you know what, I'm going to be the scorekeeper here, I think I'd win California. I think I'd win Illinois. And I think I'd win New York. Yeah. Like I said, I think he'd win 1,000% if those elections were fair, especially in that most corrupt county in the USA, that's Cook County. And it doesn't really make sense to me how Brandon Johnson got elected, even though he was polling significantly behind before that election. The Illinois Appeals Court on December 1st, they upheld Juicy, his conviction. And Juicy will be headed back to jail. Juicy Smollett. This aged like fine wine. The Kamala Harris tweet from 2019, folks. And you guys can see it here on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and Rumble. Kamala Harris, she said this on Twitter, now known as X. But in 2019, this is what she said about Juicy Smollett. Juicy Smollett is the kindest, most gentle human being I know. What? I'm praying for his quick recovery. This was an attempted modern day lynching. No one should have to fear for their life because of their sexuality or the color of their skin. We must confront this hate. Man, this really aged like fine wine. Never forget how the same media and Democrat politicians who labeled January 6 defendants guilty with no due process and gave them no voice to share their side of the story, bent over backwards and defended Juicy Smollett to give him his story legitimacy. And they gave legitimacy to his story for as long as possible, for as long as they could, when it was clear that it was an obvious hoax from the beginning. It's an obvious hoax. And Kamala Harris bent over backwards. The Democrat politicians, they bent over backwards. The media bent over backwards to try to give legitimacy to this story. And this is the same media, the same Democrat Party who has labeled these J6 defendants guilty without any due process. It's gross. Now, Juicy Smollett, he plans to appeal, and he wants to convince the Illinois Supreme Court that there are Republicans in Chicago who would run around with MAGA hats on in single-digit temperatures at 2 a.m. in the morning, carrying around bleach, hoping to encounter an African-American B-list actor who's gay. How are you going to convince the Illinois Supreme Court that there's one, Republicans in Chicago, two, that they're so Republican that they'd wear MAGA hats in single-digit temperatures at 2 a.m. carrying bleach, and they're just hoping to encounter a B-list actor who happens to be gay and black? You're not going to be able to convince the Illinois Supreme Court. But I don't know. This is also the same Illinois Supreme Court that upheld this unconstitutional so-called assault weapons ban. This is the same Illinois Supreme Court that has a couple of justices that took money from Governor J.B. Pritzker and Kwame Raoul and a super PAC. Don Harmon, the President Don Harmon, Senate President Don Harmon out there in Springfield. They gave her money. They gave Elizabeth Rockford is her name, and Mary Kay O'Brien, those two Illinois Supreme Court justices, big yikes. They gave them money, campaign money. And that looks like a clear bias to me. So we talked with Dan Calkins actually a while ago about how his case is going to be possibly heard by the U.S. Supreme Court. We'll know more in just about 10 days. December 14th, we'll know more if the U.S. Supreme Court is going to be taking up that case. Now, one thing that is interesting about his case, Dan Calkins' case, is that he's going to be arguing this precedent, and it's called Caperton. This is the court case where, it says it's Caperton v. A.T. Massey Coal Company, and this is the case where the United States Supreme Court held the due process clause of the 14th Amendment requires judges to recuse themselves, not only when actual bias has been demonstrated or when a judge has economic interest in the outcome of the case. but also also when extreme facts create a probability of bias. And I don't know about you, but getting $1 million from JB Pritzker, who is a defendant in this case, is kind of an extreme fact or extreme fact that causes me to think, maybe there's a bit of bias there. So what are we talking about this morning on The Buzz? You can see me live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. I'm always there. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's super important, folks. Cat Peterson 929. We've got to talk about John Fetterman because he is just breaking the hearts on The View. The ladies on The View, if you want to call them that. I don't really think that they're ladies, but definitely not Whoopi Goldberg. But John Fetterman, he's breaking the hearts of the women on The View because he actually dismisses George Santos for a Democrat colleague who he says is worse. He says if we're going to be expelling George Santos, we might as well be expelling this Democrat colleague of mine who I think is actually worse. Next, I've got to talk about the Wapo fact-checking. This Wapo fact-checker. The Wapo is just terrible, and it's probably why they are laying off 100 folks, 100 people, and that's what Dave Paul Blumenshine talked about on his show yesterday. They laid off 100 people. Now we've got this Wapo fact checker who attempts to fact check Ron DeSantis over this San Francisco poop map. And this fact checker does a crappy job. But yeah, the highlight, I really think, of the debate between Governor Gavin Newsom and Governor Ron DeSantis, blue state versus red state policies. I think the highlight was when Ron DeSantis pulls out of his jacket the poop map that San Francisco has. So we're going to get to that here in just a little bit. But also, Gavin Newsom's wife actually forced him off the debate stage, according to this report I've got. So she actually wanted him to get off the stage right away because he was losing. Gavin Newsom's own wife realized that this guy was losing on the debate stage. So we're going to talk about that here coming up in just a little bit. But first, let's talk about the John Fetterman story. Okay, so I don't know. I kind of like John Fetterman right now because, look, even a broken clock is right twice a day. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So not too long ago, the presence of John Fetterman's hoodie and shorts in the Senate drew attention to his mental deficiencies, his retardation. Okay, so I mean, it just drew attention to it. His shorts, his hoodie, and I don't know if he just has an issue putting on real pants, putting on a pair of pants. He's incapable of putting on pants, and his shorts and hoodie just drew attention to the mental deficiencies that he's got that seem to have made him incapable of putting these things on, putting pants on, putting on a collared shirt, but not being able to process basic conversation was not too much of a concern for the left. They really don't care that he's had a stroke. They don't care that, he's mentally deficient, but it wasn't actually until he started supporting Israel that they began to care, the leftists. They began to care about his mental deficiencies, and if he's got an issue, that now they're starting to care, you see, because he has a pro-Israel stance. Now the party doesn't want him in there. But it wasn't the lack of having a basic conversation with somebody. He wasn't able to do that. The left didn't care so much about that. They weren't concerned about that. But now that he supports Israel, oh God, we got to get him out of there. So Fetterman, he's actually found himself at odds with his colleagues, his far left colleagues, multiple times in the past several months, including his pro-Israel stance. He has a pro-Israel stance. And my favorite recent moment that Fetterman had was with a protester, actually. In a protester, he told a protester his stroke made it impossible for him to understand what was being yelled at him. So the heckler, the protester of John Fetterman's, said, "You have blood on your hands. Get off the stage," because Fetterman has a pro-Israel stance. And I'm not going to get into the whole, Israel is not being, or Israel is being occupied really by these Arab nations. But I'm not going to get into all of that. Point is, the heckler says, "You got blood on your hands, Fetterman." And then Fetterman comes back and he tells the protester, "The joke is on you. I had a stroke. I can't even fully understand what you're saying." So he's kind of trolling this protester. So I think the stroke made him smarter. Maybe. I don't know. John Fetterman, honestly, I've just come to the conclusion that this guy is one massive troll. But at least he shows the world that this partially operational brain of his makes more sense than the rest of the Democrats, and that's kind of sad. But look, if your wife is going to make you run for Congress, and that's what his wife is doing, Mrs. Fetterman. If your wife is going to make you run for Congress, might as well make it entertaining and fun for yourself. And I think that's what he was doing with this protester. But it's not just Israel that seems to be making more and more sense. His stance on Israel that seems to be making more and more sense for me. It's what he said on The View. So Fetterman went on The View and was asked about George Santos being expelled. And I love his response here. And I was kind of shocked to see this. This is John Fetterman. So he's on The View. He's asked about George Santos being expelled, and he quickly turned the topic around for Menendez. This is a Democrat who is just a raging leftist, and he actually suggests that his Democrat colleague needs to be ousted, and that he's far worse than George Santos. And I'm just going to play the clip here. Here we go. Let's take a listen.
Of Menendez, I know. But first, before we talk about that, what's your reaction to the expulsion?
Well, it's like I'm not surprised, but to me, I think the more important picture is that we have a colleague in the Senate that actually did much more sinister and serious kinds of things. Senator Menendez, he needs to go. And if you are going to expel Santos, how can you allow to somebody like Menendez to remain in the Senate? And, Santos's kind of lies were almost, funny. And he, landed on the moon and that kind of stuff. Whereas, I think, Menendez, I think, is really a senator for Egypt, not New Jersey. So I really think he needs to go. And especially, it's kind of strange that if Santos is not allowed to remain in the House, someone like that. Yeah.
Are you, though, uncomfortable with the fact that there hasn't been an adjudication, that while he's been charged, there hasn't been a conviction? With Menendez.
I am. And it's like he has the right for his day in court and all that, but he doesn't have the right to have those kind of votes and things that's not a right. And I think we need to make that kind of decision to send him out.
And you've also
been
calling for...
That was John Fetterman, folks. So we couldn't have asked for a more perfect example to describe the current state of Congress. Brain damaged man, John Fetterman, is still more compelling and intelligent than nearly all of his fellow senators. Dick Durbin. So far, Fetterman seems to be pretty bad when it comes to policy matters, but when it comes to common sense corruption, he makes a very good point. I don't like Fetterman. I don't like his policies, but when it comes to this common sense understanding that exists, Menendez here in the Senate is actually an Egypt senator. He really just cares about Egypt and he doesn't care about the United States or New Jersey. The best thing about him is that he often exposes just how unserious and how abhorrent the left really is, John Fetterman. At the very least, he's definitely leaning towards center left, I think. So one thing is clear: this depressed, brain-damaged troll does far less damage than some of the most competent people in Congress. One that comes to mind, Dick Durbin. Dick Durbin is far more damaging than John Fetterman, I think, because here's Dick Durbin. He's coming out and he's denying the flight logs from being released, Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs from being released. And I'm going to get to that here in just a little bit because I'm going to talk about this fact checker from the WAPO. The WAPO actually accused me about a year or so ago of being a QAnon adherent. So we're going to break that down because I don't think that saying that Democrats who align themselves with pedophiles are trying to take over, that's quite literally what Dick Durbin is. So I'm going to Come right back. This is the Morning Buzz, 309-451-9299. You can always see me live in studio too. That's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. That's next. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. We're going to be chatting a little bit about Dick Durbin. This is absolutely incredible. Democrat Senator Dick Durbin is blocking the release of Epstein's flight records. It's pretty creepy. So we're going to be talking about Dick Durbin. The Washington Post actually laid off hundreds of their staff. So I'm excited because they actually sought to destroy conservative news outlets like Cities 92.9. And the end of WAPO has fallen on, on its proverbial sword. So they've fallen on their sword. So I'm very excited to talk about the WAPO because I've actually got a WAPO fact checker who tried to fact check this whole poop in San Francisco thing. And I think it's kind of funny. His name is Philip. Oh, Philip. You're fact checking the San Fran map of the poop that's in San Francisco. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about that here on The Buzz. So we're not the only ones who overeat during the holidays. Our pets do too. So I was reading this survey and they found that 70% of dog owners admit that their pups get more table scraps during the holidays than any other time of the year. The most likely person to feed their dog under the table. I'm looking at you, Mom. My mom is always feeding the dog under the table, but I do too. I feed the dog under the table. In fact, during Thanksgiving or Thanksgiving dinner, I just absolutely loved our Thanksgiving this year because our cousin came over and we got to the day after Thanksgiving go in a horse-drawn carriage ride in downtown Joliet. I'm kind of from that area, so we went up there and we had dinner and we actually sat and talked about the true meaning of Thanksgiving and what it's actually all about. And we even talked about the first Thanksgiving, so the history of Thanksgiving. And it was an explosive show that I did on Thanksgiving morning. You guys need to go find it at cities929.com. It was on Thanksgiving morning. It was a Thanksgiving special where I talked about the first Thanksgiving and what the real Thanksgiving story is, because it's actually not where a bunch of Indians and a bunch of pilgrims sat down together and the pilgrims thanked the Indians with this big Thanksgiving feast. Squanto did not teach the pilgrims how to fertilize crops with fish. the friendly Indian Squanto, that is not true. It's just not true. But anyway, so Thanksgiving Day, we got the turkey out and the dog. We've got a big old German Shepherd. He's like 120 pounds, something like that. His name's Lightning. I got him when I graduated high school. And his puppy dog eyes, he was like, please give me some turkey. So, of course, I go over and I'm like, you got to give him some turkey. And you put it under the table. One thing is the cats. The cats always try to get up on the table and try to steal the food. We don't allow the cats to get their table scraps. We try to brush them off of the table. But during the holidays, I think that we do buy our cats a little bit more treats. We buy those cute little dog bones too that have Christmas the Christmas frosting on it. So our pets eat a lot during the holiday season. We overeat during the holiday season. They overeat during the holiday season. Okay, before I took the break, I was telling you guys a little bit about Dick Durbin, which we are going to get to because Dick Durbin is actually not releasing. He's trying to stop the release of Jeffrey Epstein's flight logs. And the reason why I want to bring this up today is because I'm just going to quote it here. About a year or so ago, the WAPO, and we're going to talk about them today too. The WAPO came out and they said, Peterson, she grew up listening to Rush Limbaugh on her way to school. She's a QAnon adherent. This is an extremist ideology that the FBI has deemed domestic terrorism threat. So yes, the WAPO called me a domestic terrorist. And she talks about this ideology, QAnon, and she says that it embraces it, which is embraced by many Trump supporters, that this ideology is embraced by Trump supporters. It holds that the former president is battling Satan-worshiping pedophile elites aligned with Democrats. So I don't know if this is much of an ideology other than, it's not really an ideology if it's the truth, right? So Dick Durbin, He is actually aligning himself with an elitist pedophile, convicted Jeffrey Epstein. He's aligning himself and actually defending this elitist pedophile. And he's a Democrat, and Democrats are aligning themselves with elitist pedophiles, and Donald Trump is actively going out there and trying to stop these Democrats from running in office and continuing to destroy the country. Dick Durbin wants to go after your supplements. He doesn't want you to take creatine. He actually wants the FDA to regulate supplements like vitamin D, creatine, magnesium, all of these things. And WAPO, actually, I bring up WAPO this morning because they are laying off hundreds of their staffers. So they are going to go under, and I'm pretty excited about that. But also, I've got a WAPO fact checker that I'm going to be chatting about this morning. His name's Philip. And he actually spent some time trying to fact check Ron DeSantis in this debate between he and Gavin Newsom. He spent time fact checking the poop map. So there's a poop map in San Francisco, and people mark where there's big piles of dung, big piles of dookie all over San Fran. And there's a map that actually helps you avoid the poop areas. And Ron DeSantis brought this up in the debate because he said red states are just run better than blue states. Here's example A. And a WAPO fact checker, he gets out there and he's like, well, that's not true, blah, blah, blah. And we're going to unpack it here on The Buzz. But right now, William J. Kelly, he's an Emmy Award-winning reporter out of Chicago. We've got to talk about Chicago. I mean, I'm talking about San Fran, a liberal hellhole. Chicago is, in my opinion, much worse because the crime is insanity. It's like a war zone. So tell me about the headlines that came out over the weekend, William J. Kelly.
Well, God bless you, Ken. Thank you for having me. It is very discouraging. Last week, I went to a location in Brighton Park where Mayor Johnson is spending millions of dollars building a tent city for migrants. In the meantime, the city of Chicago is up for grabs with violent crime, shootings, obviously unsolved. Thousands of shootings and murders that are completely unsolved. But, the numbers are still, on a weekly basis racking up. We have horrible armed robberies, where two or three, in many cases, teenagers jump out of cars with guns, long guns, hold them to the faces of defenseless men, women, and children in the city of Chicago and take their purses, their cell phones, etc. Well, here's the thing. None of that is being addressed. Every time you hear these statistics, it's always the same headline. No description of the attackers. No one's in custody. No arrest. And yet all of the attention and all the resources are being spent on migrants. Well, Kat, we went to this location where they're building this tent city, for which, by the way, $29 million has been spent to build the city, the tents. Now it comes out that the land is toxic. It's been contaminated from previous use, a smelter that there's like a complete laundry list of toxic chemicals that are on the land, right? So I, believe it or not, and I don't know if you have the video, if you go to my Twitter, you can see it, scooped up some of the dirt and we're having it tested. In the meantime, a report that the city of Chicago spent $3 million on has come out and has already stated that, yes, in fact, this land has dangerous chemicals that are harmful, that are in some cases lethal to humans. So this is a ridiculous fail on every different level. This is obviously what happens when you elect a substitute teacher mayor of the city of Chicago. I mean, you can't make this stuff up, Kat. But it would be one thing if we could just put all of the other problems of the city on hold while we're trying to build tents for migrants at $1 million a tent apparently. But the problem is we can't put the problems of the city on hold. The problems of the city are in free fall, out of control, and head down, face first, head down, free fall. And while we're spending millions upon millions upon millions of dollars building tents for migrants, Kat, so this is outrageous. This is other level, even for Chicago.
Let me get this straight. So there's toxic soil on this land where he wants to build out this illegal immigrant tent base camp, and this is in Brighton Park.
Yes.
And residents are upset because they've deprioritized the city, Brighton Park. They've silenced the voices on this issue. So the issue here, I mean, how can you build a base camp like this tent camp on this land that he's renting to the tune of $91,000 a month, right?
Exactly. Good. Yeah, there you go.
How can you do this? Because aren't those toxic metals? And now you're going to test it yourself, the toxic soil. You're going to go test it.
Who else is going to do it?
Isn't that going to kill or harm the migrants? Like, I thought that we were no human is illegal, right? I thought this was your humanitarian. Like, what are you doing, Brandon Johnson? Are you trying to kill the migrants?
Well, that's the weird thing. For decades growing up in Chicago, all I ever heard was the progressive wing of the Democrat Party cry environmental racism, that somehow companies, were putting black and brown people in parts of the city where the land was toxic, or vice versa, that somehow the city was dumping garbage in black and brown wards or something like this. But now here you have a black mayor building a tent camp for Venezuelan migrants on top of a toxic waste dump, essentially, from what I can tell.
I don't know. I don't know. Is Brandon Johnson are they not the right type of brown? Because that's honestly how I feel about this. Like, this is kind of racist. This is anti-human. This is kind of absurd. How could you be? Not to mention the $91,000 a month that you're taking out of the taxpayers' wallets to pay for this piece of crap land that has all this toxic chemicals. Then you're going to throw lesser brown people on it? That's what I honestly like. I think that he's being racist here.
Well, Kat, I mean, what else could it? I mean, that is as good of an explanation as any one that I've been able to come up with. I've been racking my brain all weekend trying to figure out what is the possible explanation for this. Since I visited the site, I spoke with the residents. The residents are saying to me, why didn't they? Now they're worried about toxic chemicals across the street from my house. Why weren't they worried about that before? Why didn't anyone tell me about this before? So I mean, there are so many different levels to this that I'm going to be honest with you, Kat. I'm still trying to unpack. I'm still trying to literally drill down on this. I mean, I'm literally, I guess a muckraker reporter now. I mean, I'm actually, if you see the video, digging in that camp, trying to get to the truth here. I mean, there was an actual smelter on the site of where they want to build these tents. I don't know if anyone knows this, but a smelter is like the site. I mean, it's second only to like an unsecure nuclear reactor when it comes to potential toxic damage to human life. I mean, it defies explanation, Kat. You could. Is this a case? Is this honestly? Can we just literally chalk this up to incompetence? Is it corruption? Is it a combination? Essentially, they're saying millions and billions of dollars will be spent on these migrants. Is it just a big migrant money grab? I'm trying to unravel this. I'm telling you right now, if it takes the rest of my life, Kat, I will get to the bottom of this, and I will definitely keep you posted. I promise you.
Awesome. Well, veteran Chicago reporter, feared and despised by Mayor Brandon Johnson and Lori Lightfoot. He's the host of the Chicago Files. He's Emmy Award-winning reporter, WilliamJKelly.com. Go subscribe today. And William J. Kelly, thank you for joining me on the program every Monday morning to unpack what's going on in Chicago.
God bless you, Kat.
All right, folks, we're going to be back in just a little bit. You're listening to The Morning Buzz on Cities 92.9. Whoa, that's explosive. We've actually literally got William J. Kelly telling us that Brandon Johnson really is renting out this plot of land for $91,000 a month. And they're going to put some migrants on that land. Now, I think that they're trying their best to get this toxic chemical out of the soil where they're putting these tents. But I don't know about you, but this sounds pretty racist to me. Why in the world would you even purchase the land knowing that it has toxic chemicals in it, or not knowing that it has toxic chemicals in it? You should know that. We're going to be back in just a little bit. I'm live on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Find me there and subscribe to my YouTube channel. I mean, that is so key. It is so crucial that you do that this morning. We're going to take a highlight from the great state debate when Ron DeSantis, he pulls out this infamous San Fran poop map. It's the San Francisco poop map, and it shows current, and it actually takes out the map and shows it to the current California governor and former San Fran mayor, Gavin Newsom, and he shows how crappy the streets of California actually are, like literally. And this Washington Post fact checker, Philip Bump, he comes in and he saves the day with an explanation of how to really read the poop map. You have to be fact checked on this, okay, by Philip Bump, the Wapo fact checker. We've got to talk about him. But I was telling you guys a little bit about Dick Durbin, and it's disturbing, to say the least. And there's a lot of disturbing things about Dick Durbin. The fact that he's pictured with Gabriel Calixto. I know that name probably sounds familiar. It should be familiar to you, because we've talked about Gabriel Calixto here a lot on this program. He's an illegal immigrant who I believe has fled from this accusation of stabbing Emma Schaefer, who lived in Springfield. She was a Democrat activist. And I believe Gabriel Calixto was also a Democrat activist. Perhaps that's how the two paired up. Now, Emma Schaefer was actually the ex-girlfriend of Gabriel Calixto, and he's been accused of stabbing this young girl, this young girl, and we don't know anything about his arrest. It's believed to be that he fled to Mexico, but who knows? Maybe he's out there still. Gabriel Calixto is accused of stabbing this girl, and then prior to that, he was an illegal immigrant. He shouldn't have been here. But prior to that, about 2018, he served out a conviction of kidnapping. He kidnapped a different girlfriend of his and served in the Illinois Department of Correction a couple of years for that kidnapping charge. He actually got pled down to unlawful restraint. But Dick Durbin has a picture of himself smiling with this alleged stabber who is an illegal immigrant and was here illegally when he stabbed Emma Schaefer. He shouldn't have been here. And he stabbed her and killed her. Okay, she's gone. She's dead. She's a girl probably about my age, 20 in her 20s. I mean, this is truly tragic. And Dick Durbin is a disturbing senator. He wants to regulate supplements, meaning that the FDA comes in and regulates vitamin D, regulates creatine, magnesium, all of the things that keep us healthy. And he wants to get rid of it. I mean, he wants to regulate it to a point where it probably won't be effective. Why? Because Big Pharma isn't making money. People are turning to supplements for their care, especially now after the pandemic. COVID-19 taught us that vitamin D is pretty important and we should supplement. But now, Democrat Senator Dick Durbin, he's blocking the release of the Epstein flight records. That's super creepy. Super creepy. And Anna Paulina Luna, she's calling attention to this. And I've got to bring up the WAPO. I've got to take a quick break, but I got to bring up the WAPO because they sit there and they say, "Oh, QAnon is an absolutely crazy ideology. How could you be an adherent of QAnon?" I'm not saying that I'm Q, but guys, I mean, all the QAnon ideology really says is that Democrats align themselves with elitist pedophiles and Satan worshipers. And I've got two examples here that prove that Democrats are aligning themselves with quotes with Satan worshipers, actual Satan worshipers. And I've got a fact here that Democrats are aligning themselves with elitist pedophiles. Okay, so this is not like a crazy QAnon. It's not an extremist ideology. How can it be an extremist ideology when it's true? I'm back next. Durbin wears a turban. Durbin wears a turban. Yeah, I don't know. Dick Durbin, this is kind of scary. I mean, and I really want him to answer for why he's pictured with Gabriel Calixto. Gabriel Calixto is an alleged stabber. We have no idea where he's at. I've called the Springfield police, no answer. They don't want to talk about Gabriel Calixto. Gabriel Calixto was here illegally, stabbed a Democrat activist to death, and we don't know where he's at. Has he answered for his crimes? I don't know. Perhaps he's in Mexico, but he wasn't supposed to be here. If you're watching, smash the like button and go to Cities 929 and read up on Gabriel Calixto because this is such an important story and it's gone under the radar. Only us here at Cities 92.9, only we have really covered this. So we're going to chat about Dick Durbin because he is actually now blocking the flight logs of Jeffrey Epstein's. And I don't know about you. I think that's more than just aligning yourself with an elitist pedophile. I think that's defending an elitist pedophile. And then the Satan worshiper piece. I will get to that. Even here locally, I mean, there's people who align themselves with actual Satan worshipers, right? So McLean County board member is dating a self-proclaimed Satan worshiper, somebody who literally goes out in public and screams out the word "Hail Satan," the words "Hail Satan." So it doesn't mean like Democrats do align themselves with these elitist pedophiles and Satan worshipers, and even Hillary Clinton. She actually, her team, Tony Podesta, the Podesta brothers, they were invited to a spirit cooking by the now ambassador of Ukraine. who is a witch who does spirit cookings. She's actually worshiping Satan. So it's not crazy to think or to uphold this ideology that Democrats do align themselves with elitist pedophiles and Satan worshipers, because here we have it, two examples. And Donald Trump is actually actively trying to stop this. He's trying to run against this. So how can this be deemed domestic extremism or domestic terrorism by the FBI, which WAPO are going? And I bring up the WAPO this morning because they're laying off a bunch of their employees, 100 or so of them. And she actually called me a QAnon adherent, which I didn't say I was a QAnon adherent. Now I have a picture of myself with the like this. It's a pretty funny picture where I'm pointing up at the I'm Q or QAnon or something like that. And I said, I'm Q, what of it? And it was a sarcastic thing on my social media page. And she asked me here if I was QAnon. And I said, ma'am, I'm as much QAnon as you are Blue Anon. And she printed that I was a QAnon adherent, so she must be Blue Anon. But QAnon, I want to break this down because, a lot of times people say, hey, you're a transphobe. Hey, you're an Islamophobe. And automatically we don't want to be called those things. But having a fear of a trans ideology, having the fear of Islamic ideology, um, it's not crazy, okay? And it's definitely not dangerous to have fears of those ideology. People fear the dark. People fear spiders, and I'm just going to say it. I think more people die of Islam, of extreme Islamic practices than spiders. I think more. I mean, look at what's going on in Israel. Hamas. They are beheading children. They are burning baby carcasses. They're burning babies alive. They're raping women. Like, this is a scary thing. And that's actually something to be afraid of. People are afraid of spiders, which I think is a irrational fear. Or you could say it's an irrational fear. It doesn't mean that people aren't afraid of spiders or that's wild to be afraid of spiders. But I think that's more outrageous to be afraid of spiders, because spiders don't kill people. Islamic terrorists and extremists kill people. And to say you have a fear, a healthy fear of those people who have those ideologies, that's perfectly normal. To say that you believe Democrats align themselves with Satan worshipers or elitist pedophiles is not crazy or extreme, because it's happening. And I've got two instances where I'm going to break that down for you. So anytime somebody says, oh, you're crazy, you believe in that conspiracy theory where you think all Democrats are, well, that's not really what the ideology says. And we're going to break it down because Annie herself says that the ideology is not, chalks it up to that. It's Democrats, plural. And I've got a case where two Democrats have aligned themselves with either elitist pedophiles or Satan worshipers. So that's next. Smash that like button if you're watching. Okay. Okay. So the WAPO, they've actually fired. They laid off over 100 employees over at the Washington Post. And Annie, she followed me around all day one year. I think it was about a year or so ago. It was when Governor J.B. Pritzker was debating with Darren Bailey at Illinois State University, and I was attending the debate that night. And she followed me around and did a hit piece on our station, Cities 92.9. She tried to take down this local conservative news station. And she actually called me a QAnon adherent in her article. So she says this about the ideology. She says it's an extremist ideology that the FBI has deemed a domestic terrorism threat, and which is embraced by many Trump supporters. So there she calls Trump supporters domestic terrorists. She calls me a domestic terrorist. But then she goes on about the ideology QAnon. And they don't even know what really QAnon is, but she kind of has a great definition here. She says it's an ideology that holds the belief that the former president is battling Satan-worshiping pedophile elites aligned with Democrats. So I'm talking about Dick Durbin this morning. Dick Durbin, he is actually he's prohibiting the release of Jeffrey Epstein's flight records. Now, he is a convicted, or was a convicted pedophile, and then he hung himself in his cell. Jeffrey Epstein didn't kill himself, by the way. Oh, sorry. I got a little cold. But no, so Jeffrey Epstein, he's got these flight logs. Like, apparently Jeffrey Epstein trafficked humans, but he didn't traffic humans to anybody. He just trafficked them, but there's no clients that he trafficked them to, which makes no sense. But anyway, these flight logs, Dick Durbin is trying to stop the release of these. So I'm going to come back and we're going to explain the QAnon adhere. I'm a QAnon adherent. Okay. If by Annie's definition, she explains what QAnon ideology really is. I call me QAnon, I guess, because it's true that Democrats are not only aligning themselves with elitist pedophiles like Jeffrey Epstein, but they're out there defending elitist pedophiles like Jeffrey Epstein. And then the Satan worshiper aspect of this. This is actually true. And I've got an example of that where Democrats not only align themselves with Satan worshipers, but they attend spirit cookings with Satan worshipers. Okay. So like they're actually practicing Satan worship themselves. So it's not only aligning themselves with Democrats aren't only aligning themselves with Satan worshipers, but they're actually participating in the Satan worship themselves. So I'm going to talk about that here on The Buzz next. Good morning, folks. Hey, thanks so much for tuning in. If you're watching, go ahead, smash the like button. Fetterman, he's dismissing George Santos for a Democrat colleague who he believes is actually worse. So we're going to be chatting a little bit about that. Plus, WAPO fact-checking this poop map, this San Francisco poop map, and Ron DeSantis in this debate, the great state debate, which I unpacked a lot of on Friday, I believe it was. But I unpacked a lot of it and what was said, why I think the two decided to debate each other, which I'll get into a recap of it. But a highlight of the debate was really when Ron DeSantis shows Gavin Newsom this poop map. And now we've got a fact checker. We've got a fact checker out there. His name's Philip Bump. And he's trying to really explain away this poop map, but he's having he does a crappy job doing it. Crappy job. See what I did there? If you're watching, go ahead, smash that like button. I really would appreciate it. And subscribe to my YouTube channel. Don't forget to like, subscribe, comment, and share. It's super important. And when we come back, I'm going to unpack the QAnon ideology because WAPO has actually fired like 100 or so staffers. I wonder if Annie is in that, but Annie actually called me a QAnon adherent, which, I mean, by her definition of QAnon, I mean, how can an ideology be extreme if it's true? So we're going to be talking about that here in just a little bit. I guess you can call me Q. You can call me QAnon. That's fine by me because by your very definition, Annie Annie is a WAPO reporter, and I've been talking about how the Washington Post they are they are crumbling. They are not doing so hot because they have actually laid off over 100 of their staffers. And Annie, I wonder if she's one of them. But Annie, she called me a QAnon adherent, and this is her words, not mine. The extremist ideology that the FBI has deemed a domestic terrorism threat, and which is embraced by many Trump supporters, holds that the former president is battling Satan worshiping pedophile elites aligned with Democrats. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this morning because I think it's important, much like what I tell you, when a leftist comes up to you and says, you're a transphobe, you're an Islamophobe. And folks, you're listening to the Morning Buzz, and that's what I do here on the show every morning, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. I want to get you equipped with the stories of the day, but I also want you to take these stories and to find and to really just digest them and figure out how to come back at a leftist if you ever find yourself in a conversation with a leftist. Uh, but they'll call you a transphobe, they'll call you an Islamophobe. Now, people are afraid of lots of things. They're afraid of the dark. They're afraid of spiders. Spiders don't kill people, and the dark doesn't kill people. Spiders really don't. There's like a very small amount of spiders that are venomous and can actually kill people. So you could even say that having a fear of spiders is outrageous or extreme. Having a fear of Islam and having a fear of the trans ideology, that is not extreme. In fact, it's rational to have a fear of those ideologies. And here's why. Transgender, if you look at those who subscribe to this transgender ideology, transgender people kill themselves at an alarming rate. Not only that, but they participate in sex work or what you want to call prostitution. They participate in a lot of that. If you've looked at the numbers, if you identify as transgender, the likelihood of you prostituting yourself out is very, very high. And the likelihood of you killing yourself is even higher. Okay, so this is an ideology that breeds prostitution and suicide. So I fear that ideology. Why? Because the statistics show me that if I subscribe to that ideology or if I identify as transgender, the likelihood of me becoming a prostitute and the likelihood of me killing myself is very, very high. Okay, so that terrifies me. Also, Islam. Okay, I'm just going to say it. I think that radical Islamic terrorism, and we're seeing that over in Israel with Hamas and that whole conflict, they're beheading babies, they're raping women. And we can see that imagery. We know it's happening. We know it's been happening for years. I'm going to just go out there on a limb and say that spiders don't kill people at the rate that Islamic terrorists are killing people in Israel right now. So for me to, and people have arachnophobia, right? For me to have a fear of an ideology that breeds that sort of behavior where Islamic terrorists are beheading children, that's a pretty rational fear. So when people call you a transphobe, people call you an Islamophobe, say, yeah, yes. And to be clear, I fear the ideology that breeds terrible behaviors and very violent behaviors. Okay. And amoral behaviors. I fear those ideologies. So when people call you QAnon, you need to be able to come back and you need to be able to say, whoa, 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 whoa. Let's take a look at what you're calling me here. So, like I said, Annie from the WAPO, which is bleeding, by the way, because they are laying off hundreds of staffers, but she says that it's a domestic terrorism threat. She also says that it's the belief where you believe the former president is battling Satan worshiping pedophile elites aligned with Democrats. So this morning, I'm talking about Senator Dick Durbin. Dick Durbin, as I was telling you guys, I have deep concerns about this individual, this senator. He's pictured with Gabriel Calixto. Gabriel Calixto is a known illegal immigrant who's wanted, I believe. I've tried to call the Springfield police to try to find out if he's been apprehended. We don't know if he's been apprehended. Nobody wants to tell me. The belief is that he has fled to Mexico, but who knows? He might still be out there. But he's been accused of stabbing to death Emma Schaefer, a Springfield resident. She was a Democrat activist, and they were boyfriend and girlfriend at a point. So this was an ex-girlfriend of his, and he stabs her. And he was an illegal immigrant. He shouldn't have even been here. Prior to that, he kidnapped a different girlfriend of his and served a conviction. Not the entire conviction, because he got it pled down to unlawful restraint, but he kidnapped her and was convicted of kidnapping, served in the Illinois Department of Corrections, blah, 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 blah. This guy should have been deported back in 2018 when he committed that crime of kidnapping a girlfriend of his. But he didn't get deported. He was here serving out his time and then was later released. And he was released. And in 2023, this summer, he managed to stab another girl. And this guy is pictured with our Senator, Dick Durbin. Dick Durbin is now out there and he's blocking the release of Epstein's flight records. That's super creepy. Now, let's go back to the ideology. It says that Trump and Republicans, let's just say Republicans, MAGA conservatives, MAGA Republicans, and Donald Trump, they are trying to battle Satan worshiping pedophile elites aligned with Democrats. So, yes, Republicans are trying to boot Dick Durbin out of office. Donald Trump is trying to boot people like Dick Durbin out of office. And here's the thing. Dick Durbin is aligning himself with elite pedophiles by blocking the flight logs from being released. Okay, Jeffrey Epstein's flight log, he obviously trafficked humans to somebody. He didn't just get convicted of human trafficking for not trafficking those humans to somebody. Okay, so he obviously is a pedophile. He's a sex trafficker, or was a sex trafficker. He died, folks. He killed himself, allegedly. But Dick Durbin, he's, I would say, not even really aligning himself with pedophiles. I would say that he is defending pedophiles in this action of not releasing these flight logs. That's deeply concerning. And now the Satan worshiping piece. Okay, so Annie from the WAPO, she says that this is a belief that holds that the president is battling Satan worshiping elites aligned with Democrats. So recently I told you guys about this ambassador out of Ukraine. Now it's important. President Zelensky of Ukraine, he aligns himself with Joe Biden very, very closely, and Democrats here. But this ambassador, that is the current ambassador of Ukraine, she has come out and has said that she is a witch and that she is she has flat out said that she is a Satan worshiper. And how do I know this? An email. She sent an email out to the Podesta brothers. Who are the Podesta brothers? Well, they work on behalf of Hillary Clinton. They worked on her campaign back in 2016, and they're Democrats. Okay, Hillary Clinton is a Democrat. An email, WikiLeaks, came out, and this woman, who is the ambassador of Ukraine, she's a Satan worshiper. She actually invited the Podesta brothers, who were working on the Hillary Clinton campaign, to a spirit cooking. Look that up. Look up spirit cooking. So when people like Annie get out there and they say, "Oh, you're QAnon," wear that as a badge of honor because you're on the side of truth there. By her very own definition of QAnon, she says that that's the belief that there are people out there like Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans who are trying to battle out with these Satan worshipers and these elitist pedophiles or Democrats that align themselves with these people. And it's clear that the Democrats are aligning themselves with these people because you've got two instances here. You've got the Podesta brothers who are Democrats. They have an email being invited. I mean, I don't know about you, but have you ever been invited to a spirit cooking? No. Okay. So this woman, this ambassador of Ukraine, she invited them to a spirit cooking. So check Satan worshiping. Democrats aligning themselves with Satan worshipers. That's checked off. Dick Durbin aligning himself with elitist pedophiles. Jeffrey Epstein by this action of not releasing his flight logs. Check. Truth. That's the truth. All right, I do want to shift gears. The great state debate, talking about WAPO this morning a little bit. The highlight of the great state debate was when Ron DeSantis, he actually pulls out this copy. It's an infamous copy of this San Francisco poop map, and he shows it to the current governor and former San Fran mayor, Gavin Newsom. And he shows him, he goes, look how crappy the streets of California are. Like, actually crappy. Enter in, of course, Washington Post fact checker Philip Bump to save the day and to explain away the poop map. And he explains how to really read the poop map. So, not since the fact checking of Joe Biden's alleged "my butt's been wiped." You guys remember the video? My butt's been wiped. My butt's been wiped. You guys know that video of Joe Biden. So the fact checkers at WAPO, they tried to fact check that video as well, although he's on video actually saying my butt's been wiped. They tried to fact check that video, which is just so funny to me because it's like, really, you're spending your time fact checking that video? He actually said it. But not since that fact checking has one man perfectly summarized how crappy the fact checking industry actually is. They're not fact checkers, okay? So first, let's flash back to 2018. The Human Wasteland Project created an app to allow people to track parts of San Francisco that had reported incidents of human dookie on the streets. So that way people could avoid those areas. So at the time, this St. George Alley alone was said to harbor up to 30 piles of poop per week. So this was an alley, I guess. It was a place where 30 piles of poop per week were happening. Now, here it is, the reporting at the time. The map charts all the location of human excrement incidents reported to San Francisco police during a given month. Okay, so this map charts reports of this to the police. The interactive map shows the precise locations of incidents by making them with poop emojis. So they've got like these little poop emojis on this map, and you can kind of interact with it, and you can avoid the areas that have the poop emojis because those are incidents that have been reported to the San Francisco police of human excrement, of dookie on the streets. So the poop map has been a resource for illustrating how full of crap progressive politicians are in their policies. Okay, this is really, it's not even really about the poop, although it is about the poop. This is really an illustration of how full of crap these progressive politicians truly are. So Ron DeSantis, he actually introduced this little poop map to us all during the debate, and I saw this and I was like, wow, this is pretty awesome. I don't have my clip. I wanted to show you guys the clip of Ron DeSantis at the great state debate where he brings out the map, but I can't find it right now. So I'll pull that up a little bit later. But really, what Ron DeSantis said was, hey, look at this map. He introduced the map to the masses, and it's a lot of poop. You can actually see it on screen. Sean Hannity is doing the debate. He's moderating the debate, and you can actually see all of the poop. There's a lot of brown spots all over San Francisco. And enter in Philip from the WAPO. He does journalisming. Okay, he journalisms all over this. And here's what he said on X. He goes, well, sort of. In reality, almost the whole thing is covered because the map, which is a real thing, chooses to depict the human feces with very large markers. It's a good example of how seemingly objective maps can, depending on presentation, be very misleading. So he's saying that the map is misleading because the poop emojis are actually too large. It's not what the actual map looks like, though. And then he shares an image. He goes, above, this image is pretty clear. Or he shares the image of the poop. He goes, this image pretty clearly is meant to heighten the sense of San Francisco, that San Francisco is buried in mounds of excrement, dookie, which multiple people, and this webcam can attest to, is not. So he takes a picture of this area that is covered by poop emojis. And this map, he says it's misleading because the poop emojis are too big, blah, 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 blah. Philip Bump, you are such a hack, and you are the living definition of why journalists need to be bullied more. Two key issues here with Phil Bump, okay, and his crappy analysis. One, the fact-checking turd needs to be fact-checked, okay? So here it is. He's made the dots on the California map smaller, okay? So he made them smaller, and he used an old map. So he shares out this image and he says, this is actually what it looks like. He used this old map that actually excludes data from the past 4 years under Governor Gavin Newsom under his tenure as governor. We have data available through 2023 when it comes to how many people call in incidents of poop. And this is journalism, though, because he excludes the data. He makes the dots smaller. Okay, I'll give you that. I'll give you that. We can make the dots smaller on the poop map. But the other thing is, I think that we're all missing the point here. It's not the size of the poop emoji on the map. It's the fact that there's so much human excrement on the streets that a map has to be necessary, and it's deemed necessary, and that people actually call in reports of human excrement in the streets to the police. Decades and decades of progressive control have left San Francisco actually covered in poo. Not to mention, they're riddled with crime. It's all riddled with crime. So the entire point of the debate here, of this great state debate between Ron DeSantis and Governor Gavin Newsom, is that, red policies are better than blue policies. And here is Philip Bump from the WAPO. He's nitpicking over this image of poop. Meanwhile, the real poop are the policies of the Democrat Party and what they have passed for decades and decades in San Francisco that have led to people actually pooping in the street, to where this map is deemed necessary and where people actually call in instances of poop in the street. So he's nitpicking this. He's like, the emojis are too big and like the data's wrong. And then he excludes the data from Governor Gavin Newsom's tenure. It's just incredible the lengths at which WAPO will go to lie. And they try to say that that's journalisming. No, the real journalisming would be, what policies have led to people pooping in the streets in San Francisco? No, instead he decides to nitpick this map, which is just incredible to me. All right, I've got to take a quick break. You're listening to Cities 92.9, the news and talk, Bloomington Normal. We'll be right back. Did you know that Governor Gavin Newsom's wife actually told him to get off the stage? She was forcing him off the debate stage, according to a report. That's next on The Buzz. Hey, folks, smash the like button. We're going to be back in just a little bit. Thanks so much for tuning in. Good morning, friends. Thanks so much for tuning in. I had to go grab myself a cup of coffee. Here we go. It's a good morning. We are going to be chatting a little bit about uh, Jesse Smollett, Juicy Smollett. I call him Juicy. Juicy Smollett. He went to an appeals court and now he wants to take his case up to the Illinois Supreme Court. Buddy, you are going to have a hard time trying to convince the Illinois Supreme Court that there are MAGA Republicans, one in Chicago, two MAGA Republicans that would go out and wear a MAGA hat in the dead of winter in single digit temperatures with a bottle of bleach and they would pour it on you, and they were out there looking for B-list actors who happen to be black and gay. Okay, you're gonna have a really hard time convincing the Illinois Supreme Court that that's what happened. This was a hoax. This was a hate crime hoax. That's what it was. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. 'Tis the season to be jolly and for cookies. Yes, 'tis the season. We eat a lot of cookies around this time of year. And I was actually reading the survey and I was like, that's pretty true. It found that people will eat an average of 26 cookies during the holiday season, whether they're bought from the store or homemade. Homemade. I love making cookies. I am a big fan of making cookies. Now, I'll tell you what really changed the cookie making experience for me. It was the not using actual butter. So there's like this Crisco butter. It's called baking butter, I think it is. You can just find it in the baking aisle at your local grocery store. But I buy it and you don't, but you got to be careful because when I made the switch, somebody made the suggestion that I switch to that to kind of get my cookies to be flatter and to kind of get them to look more like store-bought cookies. Okay. Because for some odd reason, when I use real butter, they just kind of look like hockey pucks. And I don't know why that is. I've tried everything. I tried taking them out of the oven for a little bit and then putting them back in and kind of half baking them. Nothing worked. But I'll tell you right now, the Crisco butter actually works. So there's Crisco butter and you got to be careful not to use. So I think for actual butter, you want to use like 2 sticks. Just for chocolate chip cookies, let's just say for chocolate chip cookies, you want to use 2 sticks of actual butter. Now, the Crisco butter, it's a little different. You don't want to use 2 whole sticks because I made that mistake when I made them the first time and they came out really like bubbly. They were like boiling and it was just a mess. So I used 2 sticks of the Crisco butter. Don't use 2 sticks of the Crisco butter. Use 1 stick of the Crisco butter. Otherwise, you're going to have like a bubbly mess of a cookie and it's just nasty. So Christmas movies always have a lot of cookie baking scenes. Uh, is this a thing? Does your family have cookie making tradition? Is your kitchen practically a bakery this time of year? I'm going to be honest. I know that they say, "Oh, the Christmas movies, that's not real." I actually do make a lot of cookies around Christmas time. It's a very cheap way, so I got a lot of people on my Christmas list. Joe Biden's America. I'm sorry, not everybody is going to get the gift that they want this year. You might just get a tin of Christmas cookies from Cat's Kitchen. Okay, so that's all I'm going to be doing for a lot of my friends and acquaintances. Obviously for my family members, they're going to be getting their gift. But this year, we're actually doing one gift per person. We're not going to, waste all this money on things that we don't really need. I would rather much have like, and I've talked about this before, Gen Zers. They're much more of an experience type. If we could have an experience with people, with our family, with our friends, we would choose that over a material gift. I mean, I'm just that way. I would much rather spend a vacation or go outside or have fun cooking, making some cookies. But friends, acquaintances, y'all are going to get some tins of cookies this year because I'm sorry, Joe Biden's America is wild and baking a batch of cookies is expensive enough. So, yeah, my recommendation, the Crisco butter. Get the Crisco butter. It changes making cookies. It really does. Okay, I do have to take a quick break, but when we come back, I'm very excited because I've got to tell you about Gavin Newsom's wife, how she actually forced him off the debate stage. According to this report, I think it's real. He did a really poor job, and I don't even know how you get up there and have a debate knowing that there's all these numbers. And Friday's show was very number heavy. I went through the great state debate and just the numerical evidence. Okay. I mean, 22,000 people just this past year fled California, the state of California. It doesn't get much more. I mean, there is no debate. It's just there. People don't like California. They left the state of California. And Florida didn't have that issue. People weren't leaving the state of Florida. In fact, people were going to the state of Florida, the mass amounts of people. So I don't know how you have a debate, but we are going to be talking about his wife because his wife wanted him off that debate stage because he was getting pummeled. I'll be back next. Good morning, friends. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. When we come back, we're going to be talking a little bit about Gavin Newsom's wife, but we'll also talk about John Fetterman. I can't believe it's already halfway through the 7 o'clock hour. We're going to be talking about Jen Fetterman and how he broke the hearts of the ladies on The View. He actually dismisses George Santos, and he says that his Democrat colleague is far worse because he's not really a senator from New Jersey, but rather he's a senator from Egypt. So I guess even a broken clock is right twice a day. This is John Fetterman, and look, my big issue here is that he was unable to have basic, and still is unable to process basic conversations, and that isn't a concern for the left. The left doesn't care that he had a stroke and that he's got all these mental deficiencies, and they don't really care about all of that. They really care that John Fetterman is out there and he is pro-Israel. And this is actually shocking. They didn't seem to care so much when he wasn't able to have basic conversations back then, but when he became pro-Israel and had a supportive stance on Israel, that's when the leftists started to hate John Fetterman. So hate on John Fetterman, much like Eric Adams, the New York mayor. A lot of those people, or a lot of the left, is starting. I mean, I don't think it's a coincidence that he's got all kinds of sexual assault allegations against him now. Eric Adams, the mayor of New York, because he's been speaking about the migrant issue. He's been speaking out about the issues surrounding prostitution in his city. And he's actually starting to sound really much like somebody on the right. And now the left, and I don't think it's a coincidence here, folks, that he's being attacked. They are looking at sexual allegations, sexual assault allegations, and all of this stuff. So, yeah, the left eats their own once the Democrats wake up and they start to make sense, and then the left just can't have that. So here we go. Let's get to some of your comments. Transgenderism is a serious mental illness and absolutely increases depression. The whole phobia thing, and just let them be happier thing is a deflection. Yes. So it is and like I said, you need to be equipped with these conversations to have with a leftist. If you're out there, you need to know what to say when somebody calls you a homophobe or a transphobe. Yes, look at them and say, yeah, I am. And no, I don't fear people. I don't fear people. I fear God. Um, right. God is the one I fear. Because at the end of the day, he's got he determines my my time on earth here is very, very short, very, very short in comparison to my eternity. And I fear God and God alone. I don't fear man. But I fear an ideology in my humanness. I fear an ideology that could ultimately determine my eternity. So this ideology, this trans ideology, the Islam ideology, a lot of it really does breed amoral things, and amoral things for my brethren, for individuals who subscribe to that ideology. So transgender people, they subscribe to this ideology, the trans ideology. I'm transgender. I have this belief that I'm not actually a woman and I'm actually a man. This is a dangerous ideology. And how do I know that? And how can I definitively say that? The numbers don't lie. Suicide rates amidst this community, very, very high. Also, this community tends to prostitute themselves out at an alarming rate. They will participate in sex work, which I believe, and most people believe, is amoral and dangerous, considering you get STDs and blah, blah, blah. I don't think I really have to go into detail about how amoral sex work is or amoral prostitution is, because it is illegal. But also suicide. Suicide is very violent. It's very sad. I think everybody can agree on that. And I fear an ideology that gets people to not only become prostitutes, but also to kill themselves. That is something that is concerning. Islam, same way. When people say, you're an Islamophobe. Whoa, whoa, whoa. Okay, yes, I am. I am fearful of an ideology that does make people do evil things. And I stay away from those ideologies, so those ideologies don't make me do evil things, because my true fear is that I won't get to spend my eternity with God in heaven, and that I don't get to be with God. Right? Our end goal is to be with God at the end of the day, because there was this great separation, and our there's an urge to be with God. And at the end of the day, that's what it's all about. And I fear ideologies that could deter me or could throw me off of that path, or throw others off of that path to spending eternity with God. Um, so, yes, I fear an ideology like transgenderism, like Islam, because they hurt people, they hurt themselves with these ideologies if you subscribe to them. And that's just based off numbers and facts. All right, we're back. Woohoo! Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. Man, we've covered a lot of ground this morning. We talked a lot about Fetterman in the 6 o'clock hour. I might revisit that here in the 8 o'clock hour, where he actually dismisses George Santos. They're trying to expel George Santos for God knows what. But they're trying to expel George Santos, and John Fetterman, he gets on The View and he says, whoa, 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 whoa. He goes, what George Santos did is nothing in comparison to what my Democrat colleague is doing. He's not even a senator for New Jersey. He's a senator for Egypt. So this is incredible to see Fetterman dismiss this whole George Santos expulsion or whatever. And he actually says that his Democrat colleague is far worse. And I agree with him. I'm actually agreeing with Fetterman. Hey, a broken clock is at least right twice a day. Even a broken clock is right twice a day. So we're going to get to that here in just a little bit. Earlier in the show, we did talk with reporter William J. Kelly. He's a Chicago reporter, a veteran Chicago reporter, and we talked about this soil. So it's in Brighton Park. This is an area in Chicago. There's this soil that's actually toxic, and Mayor Brandon Johnson, who is a social justice warrior and says racism, 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 we have to fix racism. Okay, Brandon Johnson, he's renting this land that has toxins in the soil, potentially. Now, the reporter William J. Kelly, he is actually going to go out and get this tested and come back with more for us once he finds out. But Brandon Johnson, he's renting this land where he wants to put these migrants up in tents. So he wants to put a bunch of tents. He wants to make Tent City on this big plot of land. And he's renting this plot of land for $91,000 a month. That's kind of absurd. The taxpayers are paying for land that is essentially a hazard to not only themselves, but to these migrants who are potentially going to be placed on this land. So the land could be contaminated with toxic metals. Isn't the left always the ones who are screaming about environmental justice and environmental racists and racism? Brandon Johnson, what's wrong with you? Are they the wrong type of brown? Really? I mean, this looks bad. You want to put brown people in tents on land that could potentially be very hazardous to them, and you're charging me, the taxpayer, to do it. I don't know. This is outrageous. And the left is always screaming. The Democrats, Brandon Johnson himself, are always screaming about racism. I think this is quite possibly the worst racist thing that you could do. So we're going to get to that here coming up in just a little bit. But before we took the break, I told you about Gavin Newsom's wife. So Gavin Newsom's wife did not want him to continue to debate. So the biggest win for Gavin Newsom is that he agreed to do the debate in the first place, knowing what a dismal failure that this was going to be. And I have my theory on that. Ron DeSantis, I have no idea what the goal of this debate was, because there is no debate to be had when there's all kinds of numerical evidence that San Francisco sucks and that California sucks in comparison to Florida. And really, the only numerical evidence that you need is the fact that 22,000 people just this past year left the state of Florida. I think that's like 13,000 more than what they had the previous year. So there's this max exodus from California, and we're not seeing that in the state of Florida. So that is the only numerical evidence we really need to determine what state is better and what state's not. Okay, so I don't know why Sean Hannity, Gavin Newsom, and Ron DeSantis had this little thing, really. I have a couple of theories. So Gavin Newsom, he might be trying to secure a presidential nomination from the DNC, and he wanted to kind of flip off the DNC and say, hey, look at me, I'm going to go out here and do debates anyway. You better give me this nomination, or you better consider me as a candidate for president. Otherwise, I'm going to just do it myself. Now, that might have been why he agreed to do this debate in the first place. Maybe Ron DeSantis and Sean Hannity did actually team up together and try to run PR for Ron DeSantis's campaign, because this does make Ron DeSantis look very good. He's polling abysmally compared to President Donald Trump, and he is not going to be the nominee, Ron DeSantis, but the establishment, and I do think of Sean Hannity as more establishment, but the establishment Republicans would much rather Ron DeSantis, because they don't really want Donald Trump in office, because the special interests, they don't get their money if Donald Trump gets into office, because he won't start any wars. Now, the uniparty Yankees, Cowboys, this has been a thing. They don't want the people to elect their president. They don't want a nationalist, populist president who won't get into any new wars, because they won't make money. The Yankees are the Democrats who have all of these big banks behind them, these special interest groups behind them. And then the Cowboys are big oil, big Texas oil, and the military industrial complex. Okay. These people want money, these politicians, and they're going to try to push for a president who gets them into war, because that's the only way that they make money. Think about it. Donald Trump didn't start any more wars. They think that they've got a better chance with Ron DeSantis in there at starting a war. Okay. They tried to get JFK they tried to provoke him into war with Russia several times. In fact, his own intelligence agencies lied to him several times to try to get him to get into war with Russia. And then eventually, when they figured out that JFK wouldn't be provoked into war, they killed him, the CIA and Lyndon Baines Johnson. But I'm getting derailed here. Let's get back to DeSantis. DeSantis, my point is the Republican Party, the establishment, they would much rather a DeSantis in there, because they've got more of a chance of him starting a war and making the party money. So, according to NBC, there were several sources in the DeSantis camp who witnessed the moment in the room, and 3 others were standing backstage. There was this moment where a few people were standing backstage, where there was no press, no live studio audience, and it was Newsom's wife, Jennifer Siebel Newsom is her name. She came into the debate room at least on 2 occasions to raise some objections. She also made her way to the stage during the break after candidates agreed to extend the debate, and she wanted to put an end to it. So she actually gets up on stage and she says, Gavin, please stop the debate. They agreed to extend the debate, but she did not want Gavin to get pummeled anymore. This is Jennifer Newsom, his wife. A 5th source on the ground, unaffiliated with either campaign, confirmed that Jennifer Newsom ended the debate on her husband's behalf, saying, quote, "We're done." Wow. Rather than thank his wife for intervening to spare him from further humiliation, Gavin Newsom, his team denies all of that. They said that the wife never went out there and stopped the debate, nothing like that. At this point, his wife was in the anger stage of grief, while Newsom was still in the denial part of grief. Okay, so everyone knew DeSantis totally owned Newsom, except Newsom. Newsom thought that he won. Now his team is crying and alleging cheating, implying that Ron DeSantis and Sean Hannity conspired to tag team against him throughout the 90-minute debate. So here we have it. Governor Gavin Newsom's team, they said, quote, before Ron DeSantis could unveil his poop map, uh, they said that he could see like a teleprompter. So they were talking about, the team was actually talking about how there was a teleprompter, and Governor Gavin Newsom's team's frustration with Sean Hannity and his crew centered on his promises to have them have a fair moderator. So they're trying to say that Sean Hannity wasn't fair, and they were there to sandbag him, and it was a 2-on-1 dynamic as they saw it. That's the team. Governor Gavin Newsom's team said that. And were they not aware of the San Francisco poop map? Like, I mean, what did you expect was going to happen? California's leadership is indefensible. There's a poop map. There's 22,000 people fleeing the state of California. Like, how can you say, and this is the advisor for, his name is Sean Clegg. He's the advisor for Gavin Newsom. He goes, the debate was rigged and Newsom still won. You are in denial, dude. Newsom's spokesperson, Nathan Click, said that there was a teleprompter in Ron DeSantis' site and it revealed the upcoming topics mid-debate. So he claims that Newsom didn't notice that until much later in the evening. And they said that the walkthrough, it wasn't going to be visible what debate topics were up next. And they said it was like a live cheat sheet for Ron DeSantis. I mean, this is a typical leftist response. Lie, and lie some more. Just like how he did during the debate. Fox, of course, denied all of the allegations that there was a teleprompter for Ron DeSantis to kind of cheat off of, saying neither candidate was able to see the debate questions, any of the debate questions. So Gavin got beat so badly that night that his wife literally had to throw in the towel for him, and that's kind of embarrassing. That's actually from the spokesperson from Ron DeSantis' team. They said that that's embarrassing to have his wife throw in the towel for him. If Newsom and DeSantis end up running against each other one day, and I don't know if they will, probably not. Well, 100% not. I don't think that Donald Trump, like, Newsom said one thing that was fire, and it was that neither of them were going to be the nominee for their party. And that's what makes me believe that Governor Gavin Newsom did this to humiliate the Democrat Party and to say, hey, screw you guys. You guys aren't allowing me to be the primary or to be a primary candidate. And you guys are propping up Joe Biden. I want to be that candidate. So I don't know. I think that his wife would have a hard time. Gavin Newsom's wife would have a hard time if they were running against each other, Newsom and DeSantis, in some sort of odd reality and some sort of other world, because I don't think that's going to happen. But I think his wife would have a hard time deciding who to vote for, Newsom or DeSantis. All right, I do have to take a quick break, but when we come back, Jussie Smollett is headed back to jail over this hate crime hoax after an appeals court actually shut him up. But he wants to take it to the Illinois Supreme Court. So this is a huge story that I'm going to unpack here next on The Buzz. You're listening to Cities 92.9. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Mm-mm-mm. Good morning. Hey, this is the Morning Buzz. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. If you guys want to see me live in studio, that's YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Coming up, it's 8 o'clock, and we've got to meet with Jerry Vogler from the McLean County VA every Monday morning at about 8 o'clock. We do something called Veterans Corner, and that's information, news about the veterans community, and we're going to be visiting with Jerry Vogler on that. Now, folks, a couple of housekeeping things that I want to get to. Head to cities929.com and show us your game. Show us your game 2023. We've teamed up with Bloomington Meats and Quinn Skulls Taxidermy to show us your game in 2023. For you to show us your game in 2023. I'm excited to see all of these pictures that you submit. All you have to do is submit a picture of yourself with your game, with your buck, your duck, your quail, your pheasant, and submit a picture of yourself at cities929.com. And you're going to have a chance to win one free deer processing from Bloomington Meats plus a $100 gift card from Quinn Skulls Taxidermy. We're going to randomly select that winner on December 29th. So show us your trophy bucks, pheasants, quails, ducks, and good luck. Happy hunting. Upload your picture at cities929.com. A couple of other things that I wanted to talk about. The Christmas book giveaway. Now, this is something that we are doing from the kindness of our hearts here at Cities 92.9. What's better than a Christmas gift from us, right? So register to win a copy of Constitutional Soundbites by David Shostokis. I've had David Shostokis on the program before, and this is an amazing book. I've read it like 3 times. It's like the Constitution for Dummies. This is a great Christmas gift for the kiddos at home because guess what? Our nation's founding receives very little attention in America's classrooms. And there's all kinds of bursts of information about this time in our history, our nation's founding, in Constitutional Soundbites, this book. So it addresses the founding, and it provides brief explanations about principles in the founding documents. So go ahead and register for that Christmas gift. Win your free book at cities929.com. You'll find it there on our homepage. I've got to take a quick break, but a little bit later, we are going to be talking about Jussie Smollett. Jussie Smollett, he actually showed up in appeals court on December 1st, and they actually upheld Jussie Smollett's conviction. Jussie is going to be headed back to jail. Now, he wants to try to convince the Illinois Supreme Court that there are Republicans in Chicago and that they would be carrying around bleach at 2 a.m. in single-digit temperatures, hoping to encounter a black gay man who is a B-list actor. He's trying to convince the Supreme Court of that. We're going to be back next on The Buzz. Good morning, friends. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. Go ahead and smash that like button. We're going to come back with Veterans Corner on Cities 92.9. We will be talking about Juicy Smollett. And one thing I want to point out is that we should never forget that the Democrat Party and media and these politicians, they are labeling these J6 defendants guilty without any kind of due process. And they have given them no voice to share their side of the story. And they've bent over backwards to defend jerks like Juicy Smollett. And they actually gave his story legitimacy for as long as they possibly could. And it was clear from the beginning that this was an obvious hoax, and it's disappointing. It's really disappointing. But for right now, justice is being upheld. Illinois Appeals Court on December 1st upheld Juicy Smollett's conviction, and Juicy is going to be headed back to jail. And Kamala Harris, she's got a tweet out there that aged like fine wine. Now I'm back here next on The Buzz. Subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's real simple. There's like a little thingy over here, I think. Over here. Subscribe to it. Hit that button and subscribe to my YouTube channel. If you're watching on YouTube, we're back next. Oh, yeah. I think Donald Trump could totally win Illinois 1,000%, because guess what, folks? There is one red county and most of the other county, or one blue county, and all of the other counties are red. Besides this one county, of course, I'm talking about one of the most corrupt counties in the USA. That is Cook County. And Donald Trump, he said it. He goes, you know what? I think that I could win Illinois. I think that I could win California. I think I could win New York. And, you know, the county, Cook County, we almost elected a Republican mayor for the first time since 1931 in Chicago. And somehow Brandon Johnson got in there, and Brandon Johnson is a buffoon. He got elected, although he was polling significantly behind. A little bit about Brandon Johnson this morning, and we talked about it a lot in the 6 o'clock hour. Brandon Johnson, he's coming under fire because he's actually renting out this plot of land for $91,000 a month. Well, okay, Kat, he's fiscally irresponsible with the taxpayers' money. That makes sense. And what does he want to do with this plot of land? Well, he wants to put migrants there in tents. He wants to build tent city on this plot of land for the migrants that have been shipped up to Chicago, thousands upon thousands of them. Now, the problem is here that this land is actually toxic. Straight up the soil could be contaminated with toxic metals. We have a Chicago reporter, William J. Kelly, who's going to go out and get this tested. And the left, what bothers me is Brandon Johnson, the left, Democrats, they continue to scream about environmental injustice and about environmental racism, whatever the heck that is. But this is clearly, like, if anything is going to be an example of environmental racism, this would be it. I mean, here you have Brandon Johnson paying for this plot of land, which is dangerous to not only the migrants he plans to put there, but to the people who live in Brighton Park where this land is at. And what, Brandon, are these people not the right type of brown? Why would you put these migrants in harm's way with these hazardous chemicals? Hazardous chemicals in the soil, metals, toxic metals in the soil potentially. We're going to find out from William J. Kelly if there are in fact toxic metals in the soil. And well, you're not going to address that prior to putting the migrants there. Are you addressing it prior to putting the migrants there? Why would you buy this plot of land knowing that it has, or rent this plot of land knowing that it has toxic metals? Were you planning on telling people that this had toxic metal? Like, this is racist. And I don't know what Brandon Johnson's problem is. I mean, he is a Democrat. That's problem number one. We're going to get to that story here coming up in just a little bit, but we're also going to chat about Democrat politicians and the media. The media and the politicians, they've labeled J6 defendants guilty without due process, and it's a terrible thing that has happened in this country. They have no voice. They can't share their side of the story. These same politicians and media, they have bent over backwards to share Juicy Smollett's story and to give his story legitimacy. They did that for as long as they possibly could when they knew it was a clear and obvious hoax from the beginning. It makes no sense. Jussie Smollett, he appeared in an Illinois appeals court on December 1st, and they upheld Jussie Smollett's Smollett's conviction. I don't know how you say it. I call him Jussie Smollett because Dave Chappelle called him that, and I think it's hilarious. But Jussie Smollett, they upheld his conviction, and he's going to be headed back to jail. Now he's planning to try to convince the Illinois Supreme Court that there are, in fact, Republican people in Chicago, which I don't think that there's probably not a whole lot of Republicans left in Chicago at this point, let alone Republicans that run around in MAGA hats in single digit temperatures, because this is at 2 a.m. carrying around a bottle of bleach, hoping to encounter Black B-list actors who happen to be gay. How are you going to convince the Supreme Court that that's what happened? It's a hoax. It's a hoax. And I will get to Kamala Harris's tweet from 2019 because that aged like fine wine. But we'll get to all of that after Veterans Corner. Jerry Vogler joining me on the line every morning, Monday morning at about 8 o'clock or so. We talk about veterans news and things that are going on in the community for and of the veterans community. So, Jerry, what do you got for us today?
Well, I want to do a real quick tease here on something that's going to be coming up on December 16th. Out at Evergreen Cemetery at exactly 12 noon. It's a program called Wreaths Across America, and this is a continuation of a program that has been done now for several years, and it's done all at the same time across the entire country. What normally happens, and especially here at Evergreen, there'll be a ceremony with a speaker. The anthems will be played for the service branches. 21 gun rifle salute, taps and bagpipers and so forth. And then those people that have volunteers will be dispersed out into the cemetery and will actually place leaves that have been pre-stationed there on all of the graves of all the veterans that they can. And that, as I said, is going to be held on December 16th. We'll give a little more details probably in next week as a reminder, because we'd like to see a big turnout for that, because the whole gist of it is we want to remember, we want to honor, and we want to teach about veterans who have served their country honorably.
Wonderful. And Jerry, what else have we got going on for Veterans Corner today?
Oh gosh, a continuation of a continuing problem, and that is on the recruiting efforts of our military. And this happens to be an issue with the Army right now, above all the other branches, in that the Army is now addressing not only getting qualified people to come in and enlist, but also getting qualified people to be recruiters. And only about half of the recruiting slots were used last year. There is a shortage of qualified recruiters. The program is 8 weeks long. And in response to that, since they're not going to clean up this problem really quickly, they have put some incentives in. And they've also put some orders in. 800 of these seats for the recruiters training will be filled involuntarily by NCOs. That's E5 sergeants and mainly Staff Sergeant E6 and Sergeant First Class E7s who will be assigned to those positions. Many of them unhappy about that because they're not at the end of their careers. A lot of the recruiting slots will be filled with people who are what they call ETSing, or estimated time of separation, out of the military maybe 18 months ahead of that. And if they're lucky, they'll be assigned a recruiting effort near their hometown where they expect to settle. So that's a great thing. However, in order to get people to voluntarily take those training, if they sign up by February, there's a $5,000 cash bonus coming to them. There's also, if they complete the course successfully and take a recruiter's job, they will automatically be promoted from E5 to E6. If they're E6s, they'll be promoted to E7, which is a big deal because there's a time and grade for most of those promotions, and they will weigh that time and grade. And if they, if they get at least 24 applicants who sign up for basic training, they'll get that benefit. So hopefully, with the extra recruiting and a lot of the other things that the military is doing right now, especially in the Army, will result in a rebirth of young men and women who are willing to enlist and serve their country.
So, why do you think you were missing the recruiting goals?
Well, having been a draft aide myself back in the 60s during the Vietnam War, a good share of the population would not serve unless they were drafted. But the quality of the person and experience and education is different today than it was way back in the 60s. And only about 30% of the people of really enlistment age and in the Army, I believe it's up to, I think it's up to 35 now you can enlist. They have problems with weight that they can't make the standard. They have problems with educational background, don't meet the standard. And in some cases, they have drug background, and maybe that's cleared up, but the military won't take you if you have drug problems in your past, even if it's been a while back. So that's the first thing. The other thing is there's a whole media out there, including educational systems, multimedia, and social media, that basically says America is a bad place. You know, they've done terrible things in the past. Why would you put your life on the line for them? And denigrated basically the whole American position on almost everything that you can possibly imagine. And so people are going, well, do I really want to give up at least 3 years of my life for a country that everybody else in the media that I hear from says is a bad place? That has an effect. There are other reasons too. Pay isn't as high. You lose virtually all of your individual rights when you go in. There's a lot of negative things in there, and it takes a real patriot that cares about their country and its future, who is willing to do that now. Minus the draft, then you'll go and serve.
Well, Jerry, we are coming close to an end of this segment, and so we got to take a break. But anything else we need to know for Veterans Corner today?
Yeah, I've had a number of inquiries from older veterans who never filed a claim for service-connected disability, did not have a VA medical card because they were rejected, a lot of times because of the means test. If your income is too high, then you're ineligible to have VA health care. There is a solution to that. If they have something in their background from the military service that is a medical problem, an injury, an exposure, they need to get in and have that looked at by a veterans service officer at the Illinois Department of Veterans Affairs. The CMOC clinic here in Bloomington on Hamilton Road, they have a person that comes in a couple times a week that can sit down and with them and tell them how to file a disability claim and even file it for them. If they have a disability claim that's approved, they can get VA medical care then. And that's a big deal, especially with the cost of medical care and insurance coverage.
Go get your VA medical care. And Jerry Vogler, thanks so much for joining me here on the Morning Buzz for Veterans Corner.
Have a great day, Kat.
All right, folks, we've got to take a quick break. But like I said, when we come back, we are going to be talking a little bit about some Illinois stories. I mean, Donald Trump is out there saying that he could win Illinois. I think he could win Illinois 1,000% because this state is red besides one county. We are going to be talking about Jussie Smollett, his conviction. An appeals court upheld his conviction. Kamala Harris's tweet aged like fine wine. I'm telling you, it's from 2019. Kamala Harris tweeted out about how Jussie Smollett was one of the kindest, most gentle human beings she has ever known. And she was praying for his quick recovery at the time where he cooked up this hoax. It was such an obvious and clear hoax from the beginning, but he wants to appeal to try to convince the Illinois Supreme Court that, this wasn't a hoax and that this actually happened. So we're going to come back talking a little bit about that. And John Fetterman breaking the hearts of the women, if you want to call him that, on The View. He actually dismisses George Santos' expulsion. And he actually says we should be expelling one of my Democrat colleagues instead because he's way worse than George Santos. Good morning, folks. Thanks so much for tuning in. I so do appreciate it. When we come back, we're going to be talking about Juicy Smollett. Juicy Smollett. So this appeals court, upheld this conviction of Juicy Smollett, but I think that he wants to take it up to the Illinois Supreme Court and try to convince them that this actually happened to him. We know that it's an obvious hoax, but since we have a culture that rewards victimhood status. This is what we've got now. We will inevitably produce an increasing numbers of victims, and subsequently, we will have fewer individuals who attempt to overcome adversity. So, Juicy Smollett is one of these people who we've rewarded for victimhood, who needs to be rewarded for victimhood. So, Smollett, he's probably going back to jail as an appeals court upheld his convictions related to this 2019 hate crime hoax after he was convicted in 2021. He was convicted of these 5 felony counts related to this alleged attack, and he was sentenced to 150 days in jail. This guy is a B-list actor. He's 41 years old. We're going to go through this story because there's a Kamala Harris tweet that aged like fine wine. I think it's hilarious, but we'll be back. Juicy Smollett. Oh boy. I don't know how you actually say his name. I think it's like Jussie Smollett or something like that, but he's headed back to jail after this hate crime hoax. After this appeals court shut him up. They shut him up and they upheld this conviction that he's got. Since we have a culture that rewards victimhood status, we'll inevitably, as a society, we are going to inevitably produce an increasing number of victims, and subsequently, we're going to have fewer individuals who attempt to overcome adversity. So we're going to have a lot of so-called victims in society. And Juicy Smollett, he's one of these people who need to be rewarded for victimhood. Okay, you understand the type. Smollett may be going back to jail after this appeals court here in Illinois upheld his convictions related to this 2019 hate crime hoax after he was convicted in 2021 of 5 felony counts related to this alleged attack, and he was sentenced actually to 150 days in jail. So he's the Empire star. I guess it was some sort of TV show. I don't know. He's a B-list actor. He's 41 years old. He was convicted in 2021 of 5 felony counts of disorderly conduct related to this alleged racist, homophobic attack. And he was sentenced to 150 days behind bars because he totally cooked up this hate crime. And he served just 6 days of his sentence while the appeal was pending. Okay, so he didn't serve a whole lot of time. Now, Smollett challenged the role of special prosecutors, the jury selection, evidence, and other aspects aspects of this case against him. So they've built a case against him, the prosecution, and he's trying to overturn all of this evidence. He's trying to, go after the jury selection, blah 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 blah, yada yada, peanut butter. But the convictions were ultimately upheld in a 2-to-1 opinion from the Illinois Appeals Court. So ultimately, his conviction has been upheld. Smollett had reported to police that he was a victim of a homophobic, racist attack by 2 men out of Chicago. And the investigation and search for the attackers led to charges that Smollett had orchestrated the entire hoax. He created this. And he told officers that he had been beaten by racist, homophobic assailants. And he claimed that his attackers said that this is MAGA country. And that this is a MAGA county, Cook County, while beating him. However, lawyers for Smollett have publicly claimed that he was the target of a racist justice system, and people are playing politics. So the lawyers are saying that this didn't happen, that he wasn't the one who cooked this all up, and that this is just a racist justice system, and people are playing politics, blah, blah, blah. Yes. Juicy Smollett is not backing down, and he's still determined to play victim, which makes no sense to me, because how are you going to convince the Illinois Supreme Court that there were MAGA Republicans in Chicago? Like, you're from Illinois, you know how outrageous that sounds. that not only there were MAGA Republicans in Chicago, but MAGA Republicans who would run around with MAGA hats on in single-digit temperatures at 2 a.m. in the morning, carrying around bleach, just hoping to encounter a Black B-list actor who happens to be gay. I'm sorry, but that doesn't happen. It just didn't happen. It's such an obvious hoax. It was an obvious hoax from the beginning. But yes, Juicy Smollett, he is not backing down. He's determined to play victim because he wants to be rewarded for being a victim. And I'm not surprised he's doubling down, since this is going to probably be his last acting role he's ever going to have, at least for a very long time. This is truly the only way he will get the attention he so desperately needs and wants. He wants attention. So these two Nigerian brothers whom he hired, who are responsible for helping Smollett carry out this fake hate crime attack, have since apologized for the stunt. So the people involved in this stunt have apologized for it. So these Nigerian brothers, who are twins, by the way, I think it's funny. They are actually Trump supporters now. So my favorite part of this whole story is that they're actually Trump supporters. So in a Fox News special, one of the Nigerian brothers who carried out this attack on Juicy, and he says this on the network: the police did not ask us, or did ask us, what Juicy's motive was, but Juicy did not really tell us the motive. He didn't tell me the motive. But from what he was speaking about or talking about, I would say that he wanted to accomplish, what he wanted to accomplish was this increase in his star level. So this Nigerian brother who carried out this attack and helped Juicy with this hoax, he actually says, I think it's because he wanted to increase his popularity, to rise his level of stardom. So Jussie Smollett, I don't know how you say it, I don't really care, but he's got to finish out his 150-day sentence in jail. That's likely what's going to have to happen. Now, he's only spent 6 days because he had an appeal pending. Now, one of the main reasons why hate crime hoaxes are so bad is that it makes real claims harder to believe. That's what is really disturbing about this. A number of people who are striving to be the most oppressed and the most abused. A large number of people are striving to be the most oppressed and most abused. This is what happens when you reward people based off of their identity and oppression points. Okay, so there are actual oppressed people and abused people. And when you have a large number of people striving to be the most oppressed and most abused because they want to be rewarded for that, based their identity, their oppression identity, then we don't believe the real claims. It makes real claims hard to believe. So anyway, I want to bring up this tweet from Kamala Harris because I think it's hilarious. And it aged like fine wine. It is hilarious. Mwah, perfect. She says, and I quote from 2019, January 29th, 2019, she goes, Jussie is one of the smartest, kindest people, gentle human beings that I know. I'm praying for his quick recovery. This is a modern day lynching. No one should have to fear for their life because their sexuality or the color of their skin. We must confront this hate. So she was asked about this 2 years later. So 2019, 2020, 2021. So this was her back in 2021, December of 2021. She was asked about that tweet after it came out that Jussie had actually lied and made the whole thing up. It was a hate crime hoax. So I'm going to play for you Kamala Harris, who is like the very definition of this woman who gets points for being oppressed. You know, Black woman, check, check. And that's how she got the VP gig. But anyway, let's take a listen. Here we go.
Which tweet? What tweet? About saying that it is a modern day lynching that, sorry, Jussie Smollett. Okay, so I will say this about that case. I think that the facts are still unfolding, and I'm very concerned about, obviously, which tweet. What tweet?
Which tweet? Which tweet? She goes, I will say that the facts are still unfolding. Well, don't worry, Kamala. You can finally sleep at night since the facts are no longer folding. And the Illinois Appeals Court, they upheld this conviction. Now, it is said that Jussie Smollett will probably take this up to the Illinois Supreme Court, the same Illinois Supreme Court right now that has two justices on the Illinois Supreme Court who took money from Governor J.B. Pritzker, Kwame Raoul, Senate President Don Harmon, his attorney, who had this super PAC, who donated all kinds of money to these two Illinois Supreme Court justices. Now, right now, Dan Calkins' case that was heard in the Illinois Supreme Court. Who knows what the Illinois Supreme Court is going to do? That's with this Justice Molay case. I think that he'd have a hard time trying to convince the Illinois Supreme Court that, yes, there are Republicans in Chicago. Number two, those Republicans wear MAGA hats and they go around in single-digit temperatures and they carry around bleach, hoping to encounter African-American B-list actors who are gay. I'd imagine he would have a hard time trying to argue his case before the Illinois Supreme Court, but nothing surprises me anymore. Nothing in the state of Illinois surprises me anymore, especially the fact that we've got these two Illinois Supreme Court justices. Right now, there's this so-called weapons assault weapons ban. It's Dan Calkins' case, and it's on the docket right now at the U.S. Supreme Court level, the United States Supreme Court level. They took it to the Illinois Supreme Court level, and they upheld the so-called assault weapons ban, where it bans magazine capacities of up to 15 in handguns, and I think it's like up to 10 rounds in rifles. I don't know. Point is, you can't have an Armalite rifle anymore in the state of Illinois, or you have to register them. But anyway, Dan Calkins fought this in court, and they upheld Governor J.B. Pritzker's law. It's an unconstitutional law. It goes against the Second Amendment. It also goes against the Equal Protection Clause, the Equal Protection Under the Law Clause. I think that's the 14th Amendment or something like that. But right now, Dan Calkins, what he's got on the U.S. docket, U.S. Supreme Court docket, is this case. And I think that the U.S. Supreme Court actually took up this case because there's precedent here. It's called Caperton v. A.T. Massey versus A.T. Massey Coal Company. Now, this case, it sets a precedent that the U.S. Supreme Court, they have to require the judges to recuse themselves, or that the Illinois Supreme Court has to recuse judges who look like they've got bias or have demonstrated bias or have an economic interest in the outcome of a case, but also when extreme facts create a probability of bias. So, yeah, the Illinois Supreme Court, we've got two justices who were paid all this money from the defendants of this particular case. Yeah, I would say that they've got extreme facts that point to the probability of bias here. But anyway, so I don't know what the Illinois Supreme Court would say about Jussie here, but I would love to see Jussie serve out his 150-day sentence, but we'll see. All right, I do have to take a quick break, but when we come back, John Fetterman breaking the hearts of the women on The View. They dismiss George Santos. He actually dismisses George Santos. They're trying to expel him. He points to a Democrat colleague who he says is far worse. In fact, I'm going to talk about another Democrat colleague of his, Dick Durbin, an Illinois senator, who is actually he's stopping the flight logs from Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein flight logs to the island. Apparently, Jeffrey Epstein did not traffic humans to anybody, but Dick Durbin prohibiting the release of these flight logs. That's disturbing. It's creepy. It's weird. People are calling him out on it. So we've got so much to talk about here coming up in just a little bit. You're listening to Cities 92.9. Find me on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, and Rumble. Even a broken clock, it's right twice a day. Hey, good morning. This is the Morning Buzz. John Fetterman breaking the hearts of the ladies on The View, if you can call them ladies. Whoopi Goldberg, I'm convinced she's not a lady. But anyway, he's breaking the hearts of these women on The View because he actually dismisses George Santos. They want to expel George Santos for all kinds of garbage. And he actually points to a Democrat colleague of his, John Fetterman does, and he says, actually, this guy is much worse than George Santos. So not too long ago, the presence of John Fetterman's hoodie and shorts in the Senate drew attention to his mental deficiencies that seemed to have made him incapable of putting on pants. Okay, I think his mental deficiencies make him incapable of putting on a pair of pants. Okay, I don't like John Fetterman. This is not a story about how I like John Fetterman. Okay, let me get that clear. But what's concerning to me is that this guy has not been able to process basic conversations. This guy should not be a senator. But the left isn't concerned about that when it comes to John Fetterman. What they're actually concerned about is John Fetterman expressing his support for Israel. And then all of a sudden they started to care that John Fetterman is incompetent and that he can't really serve as a senator. Now his far left colleagues and he are at odds. So Fetterman has found himself at odds with his far left Democrat colleagues for the past several months, including for his stance about Israel. He's pro-Israel. That's not the reason why I don't think John Fetterman shouldn't be the senator. I think he shouldn't be a senator because he can't process basic conversations. And he also goes in there with shorts on and a hoodie, and it draws attention to his mental deficiencies, I think. But anyway, my favorite recent moment from John Fetterman is when he told a protester to go pound sand, essentially. He told this protester that his past stroke made it impossible to understand what he was yelling about. So this protester, this heckler, screams out and he goes, "You have blood on your hands! You have blood on your hands, Fetterman!" And John Fetterman just looks at the protester, who is obviously pro-Palestine, Palestinian, and pro-Hamas. John Fetterman just says, "Joke's on you. I had a stroke. I can't fully understand what you're saying." And I think the stroke may have made him smarter, honestly. John Fetterman, honestly, I've just come to the conclusion that John Fetterman, this man is one massive troll, but at least he shows the world that a partially operational brain has more sense than the rest of the Democrats. Like, how is John Fetterman making sense? And look, if your wife forces you to run for Congress, you might as well have some fun while you're there and make it entertaining. So I think that's exactly what John Fetterman is doing. But it's not just Israel that seems to be making more and more sense. His stance on Israel that seems to be making more and more sense. It's this George Santos thing. So he was on The View and he was questioned about the expelling of George Santos, and he points to a Democrat colleague of his that needs to be expelled before George Santos, that he's actually far worse than George Santos. So this is kind of incredible. Let's take a listen to this clip on The View. Here we go.
And you've also been calling to get rid of Menendez, I know. But first, before we talk about that, what's your reaction to the expulsion?
Well, it's like I'm not surprised, but to me, I think the more important picture is that we have a colleague in the Senate that actually did much more sinister and serious kinds of things. Senator Menendez, he needs to go. And if you are going to expel Santos, how can you allow to somebody like Menendez to remain in the Senate? And, Santos's kind of lies were almost, funny. And he landed on the moon and that kind of stuff. Whereas, I think, Menendez, I think, is really a senator for Egypt, not New Jersey. So I really think he needs to go.
Wow. That's John Fetterman, folks. Okay, so this is incredible. We here at Cities 92.9, I could not ask for a more perfect example to describe the current state of our Congress. A brain-damaged man is more compelling and intelligent than nearly all of his fellow senators. So far, Fetterman seems to be pretty bad when it comes to policies and policy matters. I'm not saying that John Fetterman is this great senator, okay, but when it comes to common sense corruption, he's made some very good points, as he did there. The best thing about him is how often he exposes just how unserious and abhorrent the left truly is. At the very least, I think John Fetterman is center left. One thing is clear: a depressed, brain damaged troll does far less damage than some of the most competent people in Congress. And somebody that comes to mind is Dick Durbin. Okay. One of these, I think Dick Durbin needs to be expelled. What he has done is abhorrent and disturbing. So Dick Durbin is actually uh, stopping the release of these flight logs, which I don't know why he would be doing that. Jeffrey Epstein's flight records. Democrat Senator Dick Durbin is blocking the release of Epstein's flight records. This is super creepy. Anna Paulina Luna, she is calling this out. I'm going to call it out here on the Buzz. Next, you're listening to Cities 92.9. Hi, friends. If you're watching, go ahead and smash the like button. Share this out with your friends. Yes, Dick Durbin. This is disturbing. He's prohibiting, really, the release of these flight logs. Now, apparently, Jeffrey Epstein trafficked humans to nobody. If you're convicted of human trafficking, you obviously had to have trafficked those humans to somebody. But who's that somebody? We still don't know. Maybe the flight records would give us some sort of indication of who gave or who received the humans that were trafficked from Jeffrey Epstein. But I don't know. We don't know because Dick Durbin's out there trying to stop the flight logs from being released. And Dick Durbin, and I call your attention to WAPO. WAPO actually called me a QAnon adherent, and they explained what the QAnon ideology is from their perspective. They said it was a dangerous domestic terrorist ideology, and that I was an adherent to that ideology, and that it's dangerous. And basically what the ideology is, it's that you believe that Donald Trump and MAGA Republicans are battling it out with Democrats who closely align themselves with pedophiles, elite pedophiles, and Satan worshipers. So I want to draw your attention to this idea that QAnon is some sort of extremist ideology. Is it? Because here's Dick Durbin, a Democrat, that I would say is not only aligning himself with an elitist pedophile, but defending an elitist pedophile by not releasing those flight records. Why would you not want to release those flight records? So you're not only aligning yourself with an elitist pedophile, but you are defending an elitist pedophile and prohibiting justice when it comes to an elitist pedophile. Okay, that's Dick Durbin. He's a Democrat, and he's not only, I believe, not only there's an argument there to be made that he's not aligning himself with pedophiles, that he is defending pedophiles actively. And then the Satan worshiper piece. Okay. There is an ambassador in Ukraine. This ambassador is actually a Satan worshiper. She does spirit cooking. She says she's a witch and blah, blah, blah. Now, how does she connect with Democrats here in the US of A? Well, Hillary Clinton. Her campaign was ran by the Podesta brothers. In the WikiLeaks emails, this ambassador of Ukraine, who is a self-proclaimed witch ambassador or witch Satan worshiper, she actually sends an email to the Podesta brothers, inviting them to a straight up spirit cooking. Look up spirit cooking. And, people say, Kat, you're QAnon. You're an extremist. Am I? And is QAnon an extremist ideology that should be deemed domestic terror by the FBI? Because from what I am looking at, it's all true. You've got people who are aligned with Democrats who are Satan worshipers, even at the local level, folks. People who are dating people who say "Hail Satan." Okay, Democrats who are dating people who say "Hail Satan." On the county board, right? The Clay County board. So it's not that far-fetched to say that Democrats are aligning themselves with elitist pedophiles and Satan worshipers. It's not. It's true. So yeah, WAPO, they've laid off about 100 or so of their staffers, which is kind of funny. And I'm going to get to probably Dick Durbin, maybe a little bit of Wapo. Wapo actually did a fact check on Ron DeSantis when it comes to this poop map, which I think is so funny. They fact checked him and then they were like, hey, the poop map, they're using really big poop emojis for this map and it looks much worse than it actually is. Wait a second. We're actually debating the size of the poop emojis because the fact that this map exists at all is of concern, of deep concern, and should be of deep concern for journalismers. But apparently the WAPO fact checker was more concerned about the size of the poop emoji and not the fact that there is a poop map out there that exists where people can log the poop in the streets of San Fran. Anna Paulina, she's actually out there calling attention to the fact that Dick Durbin, he's blocking the release of Epstein's flight records. That's super creepy to me. And this is the same Dick Durbin, by the way, who's pictured with an illegal immigrant, smiling away, right, and has yet to answer for this. This illegal immigrant allegedly stabbed a woman to death in Springfield, Illinois. He wasn't supposed to be here. He was here illegally. And back in 2018, there was a different girlfriend of his. Now, he stabbed Emma Schaefer. She was a Springfield girl, allegedly. It was his ex-girlfriend. Now, he kidnapped a different girlfriend of his in 2018. He was actually convicted of that, of kidnapping. Now, he got it pled down to unlawful restraint, blah, 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 yada, yada, peanut butter. He serves out some time in the IDOC, the Illinois Department of Corrections, and is later released and is released to continue his crime. So in 2023, he allegedly stabs his girl. And this guy is nowhere to be found. I've contacted the Springfield police. They won't talk to me about it. I assume that he went to Mexico and fled the country, but we don't know. We have no idea. This guy is at large. He's a murderer at large, an alleged murderer at large. And he was pictured with Dick Durbin. Dick Durbin, a disturbing individual. He's an Illinois senator, and now he's blocking the release of these Epstein flight logs. So I want to call your attention to what Annie from Washington Post, which this morning, it's kind of funny to read that WAPO is firing 100 or so of their WAPO staffers, but she called me QAnon. She said I was a QAnon adherent, and here's what she said: the extremist ideology that the FBI has deemed a domestic terrorism threat. This ideology is that people hold the belief that the former president is battling Satan-worshipping pedophile elites aligned with Democrats. So tell me how that's far off from what I just described to you with what's going on with Dick Durbin. He's a Democrat who is aligned with, and arguably not only aligned, but defending an elite pedophile, Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein was convicted of human trafficking. Who did he traffic those humans to? We need that answer. And Dick Durbin is prohibiting and stifling that answer from coming to light, which is disturbing. And Republicans and MAGA Republicans specifically, and Donald Trump, are battling people like Dick Durbin every single day by campaigning against them and trying to get them out of office with a grassroots campaign known as Make America Great Again. Okay, so this is true. Then the Satan worshiping piece. I do want to get to that here. There's an ambassador in Ukraine, and she is a straight up Satan worshiper. She says that she's a witch. There's an email, and she sends an email to the Podesta brothers. The Podesta brothers, who are they? They're Democrats who served on the Hillary Clinton 2016 presidential campaign. And there's an email. It's the WikiLeaks email, and they leaked this email that the ambassador was inviting them to a spirit cooking. Look up spirit cooking in your spare time today, maybe at lunch. So here we have Democrats aligned with Satan worshipers, actually aligned with Satan worshipers. I would say getting invited to a spirit cooking is being aligned with the Satan worshiper. The Podesta brothers, they're Democrats who are aligned with Satan worshipers. And then you've got Dick Durbin, who is prohibiting the release of these flight logs. I would say that's aligning yourself with an elitist pedophile. So not only aligning, but like participating or defending these people. So I'm sorry, Annie from the WAPO and the FBI, who deems that ideology, quote, an extremist ideology and has deemed it a domestic terrorism threat, and it's embraced by many Trump supporters. How is it extremist if it's all true? Really? Like, how is it an extremist? I just proved to you that Democrats are aligning themselves with pedophiles and Satan worshipers, like straight up. And you're going to call me the extremist? I'm just telling you the truth. All right. I do have to take a break. I mean, the show is over. The show is over. We'll do it all again Monday morning or Tuesday morning. Today's Monday morning. Tuesday morning, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. Central Time. You can always subscribe to my YouTube channel. That's Kat Peterson 99 for more content. And you guys have a great rest of your day. Start your day off right and go like this video if you haven't yet. And it's Monday. It's Monday, and it looks like it's going to be partly sunny today. Temperature right now is 33 degrees. Top of the hour, you're going to hear from Fox News all of the headlines. So you guys have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye. I love you. And tomorrow morning, we'll do it all over again.